All right, welcome everyone. It's the Tuesday call, Jeff St Laurent, and it's kind of funny. I just set the recording up, and the topic today is, how to handle the real emotions of entrepreneurship. And right before I hit the recording, as people know on the line, obviously, but for those of you that listen to the recording, and I was just talking and getting ready to go, and we just had a nice warm up and talked with some people on the line, and then just my phone cut out and just it took me off the call. Just heard a dial tone. I'm like, well, all right, I'm gonna call back in, and that's real, and that's why I'm bringing this to you today. The real emotions of entrepreneurship. They are set to break you. They are set to break you down each and every day. And if you're high and you're feeling good, just know that they're not far away. Just like when you turn a light in a room, when you walk into a room and you turn a light on, where does that darkness go? Not too far, just waiting to creep back in. And that's the thing with those raw emotions of entrepreneurship in life, really, and all the emotions of life that affect entrepreneurship. That's the reality of it. It's not just the actual, things that happen in our business or don't happen. It's even more so sometimes it's the pieces in our world, in our personal lives that can, rock our world and distract us and keep us away from that focused place. Before we get rolling on this, as always, I'm recording these calls. They are posted on my website, sellingcoaching.com, under the university, so you can check those out. We got a lot of great calls. In addition to that, if you go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, right at the very top of every page, there's a little banner that says Join My Private Facebook Group. And so for those of you that who aren't in the group, I'd urge you to check that out. Highly consider it. We're up to about 660 coaches right now, and we're growing every day, and it's a great place to support, interact. It's a great community. Those of you who are building your coaching practice, definitely consider if your Facebook is one of your platforms, your social platforms that you're using, where your ideal market is. If you've identified that, Facebook group is a great way to build a community and interact with those people. So I highly urge you to check out that, and if it's great, you can request to join. But let's just jump right into this because the real emotions of entrepreneurship. It's something that it's really one of the things that's going to make you or break you and keep you going, and it's going to be the things that keep you consistent or not. As I said, coming to this call and then I got clicked off and cut off. It just reminded me of, there's a handful of times where I was on conference calls, and one of them in particular, I did a conference call, and there was like 300 people on the line, and it's like I was in a zone, and I remember I was just, when you're on a call like this, like right now, everyone's on mute, right? And I'm in my office pacing around, walking around, and I got my headset on, I got my recording on, but I'm talking to nobody right now, essentially, right? It's not like I'm getting feedback or response, and I know people are on the line, but that could be a hard thing sometimes. But that's the situation I was in. I had about 300 people on the line, and little did I know, my phone cut out. But I didn't know my phone cut out. It was just a dead line, and I was going off, and I spoke for like 20 minutes, like literally to myself, because I was not on the line anymore. And then it's like I stopped and I opened it up for some questions, and it's like I realized like no one was on the line. And this is years ago, before I had even my smartphone where people would have texted me like, "Hey dude, you're off the line," or whatever. I didn't have that stuff. I feel like I'm in the primitive age, but it really wasn't that long ago. And talk about being pissed off and upset and frustrated. And I remember, many times where I was, calling into something where I was a leader or I was running a call, and it just, whatever, my phone wasn't connecting, I was having issues with it. And I just remember just like throwing fits and just, like my own little fit. And really at the end of the day, like these are the reality of situations that we're going to run into. And I just want to address some of these things for us because, being a coach, in what we do with people, and we want to resonate at a high level energy, we want to be up and we want to be on. The reality of it is, though, is like we're humans and we have real emotions. And just because it's if you will, let's put it in the family of a negative emotion or a raw emotion, that's maybe a bad emotion, one that's keeping us back or that we're resisting. They're not bad emotions. They're bad by judgment, but anytime you have an emotion that's really positive and really high in a good space, if I'm going to label it, or you have a really emotion that's really low or quote bad or negative, if you will, that's by a judgment. Those are all actually great to have because it's better than being in the middle and beige and neutral and dead, right? It means you're having an emotion, you have some energy. And what that is to me, that's fuel. So if I'm really high and upbeat or really low and negative, it still can be used as fuel. It's just how we choose to channel it and how we choose to look at it. And really, one of the things I always like to say, with a coach is that, we might feel this expectation or need that like, well, we have to have it together and we have to be great at everything and our lives have to be good or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's like, the more real we are, the more raw we are when we create, videos or what we're writing, in our emails to people and however you're communicating with your audience, to either attract it or build it. One of the things I highly recommend is just being personal, sharing things about yourself, sharing the highs, sharing the lows, especially if you're dealing with a niche and you're helping people with some things that you've gone through in the past. And whatever it is, we've all gone through something, and typically that's where people can resonate the most when they work within a market, with a message is something that they've gone through. It doesn't mean you have to go there, but sharing some of your struggles and tribulations that you've gone through is a real thing. And the more real you are, the more people are going to be attracted to you. Before I came into coaching, I was in the fitness arena, health and fitness industry, and I was there for a good 20 years. And personal training. I traveled around the U.S., Canada. I did some international travel as well, but training in different health clubs, etc., and working with a lot of clients one-on-one, personal training. And one of the things that I learned through there is just really working with people and the emotions. But I was in a situation where I was in front of people, and I was always upbeat, and I was always positive. I was always energetic. And that's just naturally kind of who I was. It was motivational. I tried to be inspiring, but oftentimes, I didn't allow my real emotion to get through. Like if I was angry and I was going to go teach a class, or upset or sad or any of those other emotions, I'd always get up there and I would always be positive. And over time and through interacting with people and life and getting married and having kids and getting a divorce and things like that, real life hit me, real life and real responsibilities hit me. And I started becoming more real in my classes and sharing some of that stuff. And I tell you, when I started doing that, people who were with me for over a long period of time and who followed me, etc., they came up to me and they gave me some comments and they shared. They're like, well, for a long time, like we loved what you did and we loved your energy and things like that. But lately you've been, as you start to share more things about yourself and your highs and your lows, and sometimes you'd come into class and you weren't in a good mood and you didn't pretend that you were in a good mood for us. And we could connect with that because, like a lot of people would come into to a class or to work out and they're not in a good mood, and that's the reason they're going. It's their escape. It's their one place where they can get away from their family, their work, their friends or whatever, and they can be by themselves and maybe take out their frustration and move some weight around or run and get out of breath and release some endorphins, and they leave there feeling better and release some stress. And sometimes when they see someone up there who's fit and always happy and always inspirational and always motivational, it's like they can't connect with that because it's nice to have, but it's not real. I mean, it's not real. It doesn't happen all the time. People don't walk around just, oh, life is awesome and things are great. And you can be feeling that way, but 5 minutes later you can get hit by a bus and it's just like, oh my God, it's the cloudiest, rainiest, darkest day ever. And those are the real life's ups and downs. And that's why, as we start to build an audience and we bring this in, not only is it managing it for us, but just allow that natural ebb and flow of your emotions and bring that into your business. I don't recommend having to go into it, if you're angry and pissed off or really sad. It's like, bring yourself up a little bit or coach yourself a little bit. But once you've worked through that emotion, share some of those things if you feel it's relevant for what you're working towards. But as we talk about the emotions of, of business, as I'll always say, our job as an entrepreneur is the consistency over time, right? It's how we build a business is consistency over time. And you're going to see a lot of marketing. All of you are out there on the internet and getting emails and signed up for lists. And you're going through schools, you've graduated from schools, and you're learning, right? And you're listening to people like myself, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other people that you're subscribed to or listening to. And one of the things you really want to watch out for is that, and this is, I like to preach this because it's not sexy, it's not marketable, but it's real, is the fact that entrepreneurship is slow. And it's going to be a lot slower than you think or anticipate. And there's a lot of people out there marketing like, oh, fast this and do this in 20 days and, 6 figures in, 6 weeks or whatever it is. And they're promising you fast results. And it's just, you've got to go back to like I talk about the fitness arena that I was in. And it's just like any market, but fitness is a great parallel where it's like, you want to release some weight, you want to build some muscle, you want to get stronger, faster, healthier, so you can do whatever you want to do. It takes time. You can't just go work out for a few days and then just, put on your skinny jeans. It doesn't work that way. So you've got to manage those emotions. You've got to manage those expectations. And within entrepreneurship, those are the biggest things. Is really what's going to help you a lot within the business itself is managing the emotions from coaching yourself. So using the same skill sets you use to coach clients to coach yourself. So if you're feeling, let's pick any emotion, but when you're starting to feel that raw emotion, it's like, where am I feeling this way? Where is this coming from? How would I like to feel? What would that look like? What would I want to focus on? What would I have to focus on or do in order to get me to allow me to start to feel that way? So allow me to start to create some action or create some momentum. And it's definitely not easy to do that. But that's our quick way of managing our emotions is starting to understand is how we can start to coach ourselves. I know one of the biggest values that I loved about coaching, which drew me to doing this as a business, was when I was being coached really well from somebody, how amazing it felt, the magic of coaching, so to speak. It works really well when it's seamless and effortless and no one's trying anything. They're not trying to ask questions. They're not trying to do anything. It just happens. And there's this easy back and flow between the coach and the client. And that really was like, wow, I enjoyed that so much. And that's why I wanted to do it. So I remember working really hard on how I can bring that to myself. How can I coach myself? And as I started to master that for myself, I understood myself better. And those are some of the biggest pieces that we can manage ourselves and our emotions through coaching it and then understanding ourselves better. So let's just talk some of these things. And when we talk about expectations, a lot of where the raw emotions come from in our business is our expectations. I was on one of my master mentoring calls. I have a group mentoring program that I do, and I had a couple people on the line yesterday that we were doing some mentoring with, and one of the people, she had her first what I would call Tuesday call. It's her Thursday. I forget the name of it. One of my clients, like a tech talk type of thing. And so she started doing that, and I'm like, yeah, we got to get that going. So we set that structure for her and her marketing around it, and she launched it about 3 weeks ago. So this week is going to be her 4th call. And before she even launched it, I told her, I'm like, just so you know, when you have your first call, I want you to expect that no one's going to show up. Like, just know that no one is going to show up. It's just going to be you on the line waiting for people to call in, and the reality is that no one's going to show up. She's like, okay. And, first week, no one showed up. Second week, I think 2 people showed up, and then 5 people showed up, and then this week we'll see what happens on Thursday. But even though I told her, no one's going to show up, I'm like, if people do, great. But just expect no one to show up. I'm like, that's why I want your expectation to be, because then if you're there and someone shows up, you're going to be elated. Otherwise, you're going to be disappointed. But even though I told her that, we're talking on the mentoring call, and she was saying, I was like, yeah, it was hard though. Even though I know you told me that, I really wanted people to come in. I just, in my head, she said, I just thought, I'm like, well, I have some people. I'm like, they're going to show up. People are going to call in, but no one did. And so those are hard. And then one of the calls, I think she said that 5 people called in, but 3 people left early on. If I'm on a call doing this and I hear a ding, someone could call in late, but also someone could hang up early. and all things like that. You have to start to understand, like, how am I going to manage that? Those are the things when the greatest sign you could ever have are these raw emotions, feeling of disappointment, frustration. And here's a perspective I want to give you with that, even with the stories I share with you of, no one showing up, etc., is that this is kind of a solution for you which can help you. A perspective that's helped me along the way is that, if I wasn't feeling these emotions in my business, or the reason I'm feeling these emotions is because I'm doing something. In other words, if I wasn't doing anything, I wouldn't be feeling this way. I might be feeling guilty or upset with myself for not doing anything, but the feelings of disappointment and frustration, they're coming because I am doing something. The fact that I chose to start up a call and I had the call and no one showed up, that's actually a good thing. You wouldn't feel that way if you never had the call. You'd be protecting yourself from that emotion. A lot of people say, well, what if no one listens? What if no one hires me? What if no one likes what I have to say? Well, I'd be like, great. If no one likes what you have to say, at least you're getting it out there. At least you're creating some action and you're speaking your voice. If no one likes what you're going to say, well, there's going to be some people who will and some people who won't. We can't allow that to not let us get there. We're protecting ourselves from these emotions. We know they're out there. We know that disappointment. We've done it before in different areas of our lives. And so now it's just like the fears are just that false evidence. It's the stuff that we tell ourselves in our head and then it becomes real because we're focusing on it. But it hasn't happened yet. But allow it to happen. There's nothing better than massive disappointment because, as a few of you said before we started this call up, it's like that's going to lead you to growth. That's going to lead you to, becoming someone valuable. And that's really what entrepreneurship is, we don't get paid for time. We get paid for the value we bring to the market. And that's why we work on ourselves as entrepreneurs. And the more valuable we become, the more we can be compensated for that. And that's why we work on that over time. And we become someone valuable. That's the greatest gift we could ever get in this business of entrepreneurship. So we talk about those expectations. They're messy and real. Some things that happen along the way, right? So I talked about, no one showing up to the call or something that you do. Having events, starting up your event and just no one registering, no one showing up. I've done so many different events that I've done myself, and it's just like I work so hard, and just to get 2 or 3 people in the seats, and it's not a bad thing; it's a great thing. But of course, you have this grand vision of everyone showing up and having these great seats. But the reality is, especially if you're doing live speaking engagements, I've did that for 10 years on the road and worked with a lot of other speakers who are a lot bigger than I was, who had a lot bigger databases as well, and the reality of it was, and straight from their mouths, and working with them is like I've spoken to the several hundred people and plus, and I've spoken to the handful of people and less, and it's not a sexy road, and you can fly across the country and be in front of 2 people. It's like that's the reality of it sometimes, but you got to manage that and make the best of and create opportunities from that. People, you put your free offer out there, you do a Facebook ad, or you just, you get a free offer. The things I work with my mentoring clients is, once we've established who they're helping with what specifically, and we've got their platform set up, then it's like, all right, let's figure out what's going to be our free offer, so people can enter their name and email address when they start to consume their information and become a part of their database and their email. So what if no one's subscribing, or what if they unsubscribe? That's a great thing is send your emails out, and so many people I'll work with my mentoring clients, and initially they're so afraid. They're like, oh well, I'll send an email like once a month, or maybe once a week, or once every other week, and it's like, well, we want to send emails out 3-4 times a week if we can, every day if you can. We want to set up our marketing structure around that so there's a reason. We don't want to just be sending emails to send emails, nor do we want to just send emails just saying, hey, buy this, buy this, buy this. We want to connect, and email is a communication tool. How often do you email the people that you interact with the most, or even in a work situation? If you're working with a direct employee or a manager, how many times do you email them on a daily basis? It's no different, right? It's communication. So you got to communicate with your audience. So it's not, oh, I'm just not sending promotional emails, but I'm sending emails to communicate, what's going on? What are we going through? What's the one tip I could start to give you? Can you let them know about a call you're doing or an event that you're doing? Especially that's why I always recommend having one on a weekly basis, like my Tuesday call. It gives me a reason to email you at least 3 times a week. It gives me a reason to, let you know when the call recording is up there on the website. It gives me reasons to post in my Facebook group and on my Facebook page, other than just other things that I want to talk about or educate people on. At a minimum, it gives me a structure to email people at least 3 times a week, and then have other marketing opportunities just to communicate and let them know what's going on. A chance to interact with people like we did at the beginning and the end of this call, and with my audience. So those are the structures, but it is when you send those emails out and then people unsubscribe, right? And you see that unsubscribe, it's like, whew, I remember seeing that, for the first time. It's like, whoa. And it's one thing if you don't know the person, but then when you know the person, it's like I've had like good clients unsubscribe from my list, and I'm like, well, they were my client and we were together for like years. I'm like, why are they unsubscribing, And sometimes I'd email them like, hey, I noticed you unsubscribed from my list and I just want to make sure things are cool and blah, blah, blah. And, it's like, how do you handle some of that stuff? And part of it is just recognizing it's like, just like yourself, you subscribe to lists, you unsubscribe to lists. Everyone has their reasons, and sometimes it's just like, oh, I'm sick of these emails or whatever it is. But stay true to what you're doing, and you can't allow the fear of some of those things or upsetting someone even dictate what you do or you don't do. You have to stay on your path and know, I've got to continually be doing this stuff, and do it with value, do it with passion, do it with authenticity. But when you do that, there still will be people who unsubscribe or don't like it, or don't interact, and it's just allow them to be where they're at. Maybe your message isn't valuable for them anymore, and so they're moving on. I mean, that's a fact of life. Just like relationships and friends. We have friends that we were friends with in high school and grammar school and maybe even college, and afterwards, and it's like we could get together with them, and it just sometimes you just don't have anything in common anymore, or just the past was the past and you've moved on and you're a different person now. So it's just like you do move on, and sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's not easy, but same thing with here. We build relationships and you have relationships with people. But that's why a lot of it is when you start to understand selling. Again, I always relate stuff back to selling in a lot of ways. Selling can kind of, when I say take the emotion out of things, it's not like I'm trying to take the emotion out of business, that piece. But especially when you understand that what is the foundation of selling is the timing and need. Timing and need. You hear me say that all the time. So in other words, when someone has a need and the timing is right, that's when they look and that's when they buy. And if you're in front of them and they see the value in what you're offering and their timing's right, they consider hiring you, and then they hire you and they work with you, or they buy your product or something like that. Timing and need. Well, that timing and need can change over time, so maybe their need has changed now and they're at different phases of their life, and what you're doing and what you offer, even though they love you and even though they had a great experience with you, their needs are different, their timing is different, and they're moving on. And those are some of the things that we just want to start to understand and move on. We never want to get too attached to leads and to potentials, because people move on. I've even had clients I've worked with, many over the years, that it just seems like things are going fantastic and great relationship, and all of a sudden it's just like you get an email and it's like, hey, we have to stop working, blah, 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 and it's like they disappear off the face of the earth. And initially I'm just like, what did I do? But I didn't do anything. I didn't do a thing. It's something's going on in their world and they don't know how to handle it, and for whatever reason they're pulling away and they're moving on, and it happens. And I'm just sharing some of these experiences with you because these are some of the realities of it. They don't interact, they don't comment. These are a lot of expectations. You start posting things and you think, oh, well, I'm going to get all these comments or, these likes or whatever social platform it is. And it's like you post and it's like there's crickets, or you see the statistics and it's like, 1 view to 10 seconds, which was like just from them scrolling type of thing, So, and it's hard. It's like you put all this work into a video or a post or whatever, and it's like no one's reading it. And I always tell people right away, especially with my clients who are like, they're so afraid to maybe get an email out there or get a post out or do a video. I'm like, hey, no one's watching it anyways, in the beginning. And that's a good thing right away. It's like, if you're not feeling good and you don't have it quite together yet, it's like, well, no one's going to read it or watch it to begin with, In my group program, my group mentoring program, one of the guys has just helped him working with his niche, came up with a phrase for him, and he made a 12-minute video. And I'm like, hey, why don't you post it in my Selling Coaching Facebook group? And in this way, first of all, I'm going to get a chance to see it, but I want to get you used to posting it in like the real world with real people. And he's like, oh, geez, I don't know if I want people watching that just yet. And I'm like, well, the reality is no one's going to watch it. I'm like, I'm going to watch it because I'm your mentor coach, and I'm going to do it. And I'm like, people might scan, people might throw a quick like in there because they're supportive. They might even make a comment or two because there's a few people in there that are more engaged than others. But I'm like, the reality is no one's going to watch it. He's like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, if someone else posted a 12-minute video, are you going to sit and watch that? He's like, probably not. But that's the reality of it. But it's like, those are some of the things also that can help you get through your fears and start taking action. So the thing, it's how we perceive it. Like, oh, no one's going to like this or whatever. But it's like, well, no one's going to watch it. So maybe that can, right away, that's a good thing. So, and sometimes it can feel like people don't support you, in and out of your business, or it seems like the world or everything's against you. Sometimes you can feel like you don't know what to do. There's been so many times, and I'll even say even now, I'll admit, I've been doing coaching full time since 2004, and only up until, and I'll say this, only up until like even in the last like probably 5 or 6 months, I've never been clearer than ever with my business and where I'm going with it and what I'm doing with people. I've had lots of clarity through those years, those 12 plus years in coaching. And what's helped me a lot is having a very well-defined niche, who I'm helping with what specifically. That's definitely helped me a lot. But I can remember really a lot of years, and these are years where, financially I was doing very well in my business and I was creating great things in my business. But even along those great moments, there were very many moments, frequent moments on a weekly, even daily basis where I would doubt myself and not know, like, where am I going next? Or where is this all going to? Meaning I was getting clients, I was earning good money, I was, I had stuff set up, there was lots of stuff going on. I was writing a book or whatever it was. But then, I would think and project out, and I'm like, well, am I just going to keep doing this? And like, well, what if it stops? And I'm like, well, how did I even get to this spot? I didn't even know. And it gets scary sometimes. The financial piece of entrepreneurship, those people who, are doing it full time, or you're looking at it, one of the calls I did in my university, is setting up a financial plan, to transition to full time. So if you want to check that out, that's a great call to definitely create that financial plan. I always work with my mentoring clients. One of the first things I talk with them before they even hire me is, let's talk about your finances. Let's talk about, your income and what you're going to need, to create at a bare minimum to just, at least so you're not going behind or going into debt every month. And so, but the financial anxiety of entrepreneurship, that's a real big one, especially if it's money's a tough thing for a lot of people. And so it's like, how do you manage that? And it's setting up the buffers of, and whatever it is, whether it's saving, cash reserve, if you have the ability to do that. It's like, one of the things I did was, I had a line of credit. I have a $25,000 line of credit. And that thing has saved me, I can't tell you how many times. And probably over the last, I opened it up in 2008. So, we're getting close to 10 years on it or so, 8 years now. But over the course of time, I've probably drawn and gone back close to like $700,000 on it, of a $25,000 line, meaning I borrow money and I pay it back. I borrow money and I pay it back, borrow money and I pay it back. And that's a pretty large number. And the reason that is because cash flow isn't consistent all the time in entrepreneurship. And sometimes it'd be like, okay, my mortgage is due, and this is due, and this is due, and I have, $5,000 worth of bills, and I'm like, okay, they're due tomorrow, and I just don't have any money coming in right now, so I gotta write myself a check from my line of credit for $5,000 and deposit it in my account. That feels good. I paid myself, but But then all of a sudden, things turn around and some clients pay and I get some new things, or I do an event, I sell some books and I pay myself back. So it's how do we figure out solutions for some of that stuff? And those are the things, obviously, when I work with my clients, I help them out more. But even in some of the calls I do, is I start talking about that stuff. That's why I reference all of you to that call, because I want you to be aware of some of that stuff. Finances can make or break you in this business, and the last thing you want to do is quit your job too early and then have finances be a reason why you have to go back and can't do your business and got to find a job or a part-time job. And having that is not a bad thing. With my clients, I'm like, hey, if you can find a job or a part-time job that's not overwhelming and not stressful for you, that can kind of at least at a minimum give you that kind of that baseline salary, so you don't have to worry about finances, while you build your business. It takes the pressure off your business, unless you thrive under pressure. But everyone has their financial tolerance with that. So it's starting to figure some of that stuff out. There's technical aspects to the business. Right when we got on the call right away, one of my mentoring clients actually was, and she's like, oh, we're going to have a mentoring call after this. And she was like, wow, the technical stuff is overwhelming me, and it's like you get in this catch-22. It's like we've got to do, maybe we have a website and we've got to, if we're going to do a call or, there's some simple technical stuff and there's some more involved technical stuff. And it's like we're an entrepreneur, so we've got to deal with this, right? And it's like sometimes we don't have the finances to pay someone to do this, so we've got to figure it out ourselves. And sometimes that can be the hardest thing in the world to do. And you're sitting there for hours just trying to figure stuff out, or you're calling helplines and it's not getting anywhere. And I can't tell you how many times I've had just countless frustrating days at spending 10 hours on multiple days setting up email, like stupid things that are just so simple or should be so simple. Transferring an email address, moving from like Outlook to Gmail, like for instance, and it's just making sure everything's being forwarded correctly, website stuff, posting, and some people are like, oh, that's easy for me. And some people are like, I don't know. And fortunately, with with the internet and the way design has gone, there's been a lot more advances where it's become simpler and simpler to use in a much more usable format. But some of those things can be very, very frustrating. And that's why it's so vitally important to have a team of support, have some people around you that you can start to ask. So it's create a team. You're going to need some technical support. So who's on your technical support? You need some financial support. So who's on your financial support? Whether it's bankers, it's friends, it's things like that. So you can set up a system there. So when you're having trouble in a financial area, when you're having trouble in a technical area, you have your resources. Those are some big pieces that are going to help you. The support is a big thing. That's why I love like group programs and masterminds. That's why I offer my group mentoring program, the JSL Mentoring Mastermind, is because the people that are in that, it's like you have the ability, even just access to me, just ask me questions and to be able to just the simple things sometimes can be very frustrating. And that's why, like with my clients, when I tell them, I'm like, hey, listen, when you set this up, like setting up your email, and like I recommend Aweber, for instance. It's how to contact and stay in front of your email database, and I'll tell them, I'm like, call customer support, and here's exactly what to ask them. Ask them for X, Y, and Z, or ask them, hey, I need to set up this, this, and this, and then they'll walk you through it. So even sometimes just knowing what to ask, having that experience there has helped me out tremendously as well. And that's why I love to, when possible, I like to give that to people and saying, just ask for this. And when you know what to ask for, all of a sudden it's a lot easier. Someone goes, oh, okay, and then they'll walk you through it and it's done. But some of those things can help really managing those emotions is a big piece. Rejection's a big piece. When it comes to people not wanting to do something, I went back to like unsubscribing or things like that, or people don't want to hire you or they don't show up. Obviously, we say, okay, rejection, it's not about you. It's never about you. But sometimes it's hard to not take it personally, especially in a business like this where it is so personal for us and we're investing everything in it. Not just finances, but emotionally. We want this to work. It's a passion-based business. And so it's hard sometimes not to feel that rejection and not to make it personal. But again, like I said earlier, that's why I really want to teach the sales, because you realize that it's not you, it's just timing and need. They don't have that need, or it's really not that big, or the timing's not right. It has nothing to do with you, but understanding that more can definitely help you. We could talk about a lot more emotions, but like I said, I want to be able to open up the call. Before I do, I want to say one last thing, and this is really a big solution to all this, is one of the things that has gotten me through to today with entrepreneurship is I've learned to trust myself and the results that I've created over time. Meaning that, when things look like not great for whatever reason, whether it's financial, or it's like, oh man, where's my next client coming from, or what's going on here, and I'm not quite sure of where I'm going. I always go back to, I've always figured it out. It's always worked for me. And now it's nice to say that, and it's easier for me to say that because I've got 12 years under my belt, and then before that I did personal training. I had my business there, and I figured it out there too. And even in the roughest situations with my business, no matter what I was earning in my business, there was always times where money can be tight because you don't have a client coming in, or no one's paying you, and the bills keep coming. And so I remember back to times when I did not know. Like sometimes I would lie there at night going, oh my God, I have zero clue of where my next paycheck's coming from. In a job, you just show up at work the next day and you do that for another week and you get another paycheck. For entrepreneurship, it's very, very different. I can remember those times, and what gets me through those times and what's gotten me through those times is trusting what I've done and trusting the skill sets that I have. And so for someone, maybe if you're listening to this call and you're like, well, Jeff, I can't do that because I can't trust myself because I haven't done this before. I'm just starting off. I don't have any results, to go back on. A couple of things I'll give you is number one, look back to things that you have done that might be similar, or that did kind of really pull from some of your survival skill sets, so to speak. And I'm sure there's been times where you've been tight with money and you figured it out, or you found a way. You've been in a really tough situation in your relationship, whatever, and you figured it out. Often people tend to look at all the times or the examples in their lives where they failed or it hasn't worked out, and they allow those things in the past to dictate, what they do in the present and the future. Well, we could do just the same thing, but instead of looking at the things that haven't worked out, what about the evidence in our lives that has worked out? And if that's still not working for you, that's where what I found is I borrow that trust. And that's where, when you work with a coach, you work with a mentor, someone who's been there and done that, what can helpful is, and I find myself saying this to my mentoring clients like almost on a daily basis, is, when they get to that spot, is I'm like, listen, I could coach you through this, but I'm not gonna. Because I know if we were to coach you through this, on the other side, you might feel good, but it's going to be temporary. What's gonna really get you through this is by doing it and trusting that, what I'm telling you, like follow what I'm telling you. I mean, you're going to have your own learning process. You're going to have your own, struggles within it, because that's natural. But I'm like, follow this, do this, and just trust that it's going to work out. Trust that it's what's supposed to happen is going to happen. So you borrow that trust through that mentor, through that support that you have, the support network. And you've got to have the people that have experienced some of these things before, that you can kind of lean on, and you can kind of put your faith in a realistic. You don't promise the world to somebody, but it's like, listen, move through this. I recognize that this is tough for you right now, or it's hard, but trust that this is going to work out the way it's supposed to. Do what I'm telling you to do, and let's get on the other side and see where you're at. And even if it doesn't work out and your worst fears come up, let's talk about it, let's learn from it, and let's move through it. And that's enough to get people to do things. And that's going to be vital, especially moving forward. Because this is a real thing, and it's not going to stop. And that's why I kind of shared with you, over my 12 years of doing this, and then even before that within fitness, I still deal with some of these emotions, and not some of them not so much like on a very severe level, because I've learned a lot of those things. That's why I'm doing a lot of mentoring now, is I don't want you to have to go through some of this stuff. I want to share some of that stuff with you. That's why I share some of the stuff on the calls and when I'm working with people one-on-one in my groups, because understanding that, knowing that, even just like setting up a financial plan and having those buffers, etc., that can save you the world. I had a client that I worked with publishing a book, and I published a book, and if I had to do it all over again, I would have probably 50, 60 grand in my pocket, because I would do it differently. But there were a lot of things I didn't know going into publishing a book that if you were to publish a book and I was, your mentor coach, like I would tell you, like there are very specific things that I would or wouldn't do that would have you just great results, but you wouldn't have to spend, fraction as much money as I spent doing it. Don't regret it. Still was one of the best things I did in my business. But those are examples that, again, they take a lot of time, energy, and money that you don't have to go through. And so part of that is if you can't trust yourself, find that support network. Obviously, I'm here in any capacity, so reach out to me.